a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. This is season 26.
A season of revisits.
Episode number 23, covering the song Perfect Strangers. This was originally reviewed with my buddy Alan from the RushRash Podcast, going through the entire catalog of Rush, much like I'm going through the entire catalog of Deep Purple. Big difference is they do it by wheel. So it's just kind of whatever song comes up, and a little different because I'm obviously doing everything chronologically, including this revisit season. Although the way that I schedule, I reach out about 30 days ahead of the episode airing so that my guest and I can schedule everybody. Most of the people that I've had on are podcasters, and so they have very busy schedules. They're coordinating with other people. So I want to give plenty of time, although some have been down to the wire. Interestingly, though, while it was actually 1 week ago today, as I'm recording this, that I did my episode of Perfect Strangers, it was just yesterday that Nate and I recorded the episode for This Time Around, an Ode to G. And that airs in a couple days. We had a hard time coming together on the schedule for that one because he's so busy. And I get it. I absolutely get it. But it's interesting, while the show airs chronologically, it certainly does not record chronologically, as I'm currently 4 months ahead in the recording schedule, except for Monday and guest episodes. So yeah, it's really weird kind of doing an album and then getting away from that album and then coming back and doing pickup episodes for that album, and now kind of being out of context or away from the groove and the mix and all that stuff. So it's been a really fascinating journey. But anyway, Al and I had a great time reviewing Perfect Strangers, such an important song for this band that they still do it in concert to this day, or at least as of the time I'm recording this, when they come out with a new album and do their new set list for the next tour. I don't know. I have no idea how they will, how they'll do the set list. I know that this is a popular song, so it wouldn't surprise me if it stays in the set list. But as of all the shows that I've ever seen, because the first tour I saw them on was the Perfect Strangers tour, every show I've been to, I believe they have done this song. I was trying to remember, without looking it up, what the set lists were for the August 2024 concerts that I went to in Detroit and Chicago. But I feel pretty confident in saying they played Perfect Strangers both nights. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my memory isn't what it used to be or even was that night. But I do believe that they did both nights. In any case, it's a great song. I'm looking forward to digging into it and finding maybe some things that I didn't find when I reviewed it with Alan. Because as I've mentioned, the point of doing this season is that when I'm working with a guest, my focus is different. The conversations are different. And when I'm doing them myself, I have a more direct focus on the finer points of the song. So let's see what I find. I may not find anything that I haven't found in the song before. We're going to find out. Here it is, Deep Purple doing Perfect Strangers. Aside from what an amazing sound we're getting out of the Hammond organ here, I appreciate that this is not tempo synced. It's not right on the beat. It's very human. He leaves room to breathe, room to feel how he's feeling the piece in the moment. Can't really play that to a click track. But what's nice is if you are going to record to a click track, you can start it at the end of his playing, and you just hold that note until the one, and then the band kicks in. So you can really hold it for, a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, however it's going to work out, and you're not affecting the preceding performance. It's very human. Much like the alive feel of the performance from John, I always smile when I hear things like guitar squeaks like that we got from Richie, because it just reminds me, again, these are real musicians recording this live to tape. This is really before digital recording kicked in. And so this is it's classic style recording as it ever was from Deep Purple. Bringing the studio into Stowe, Vermont, where Rainbow had been recording the last couple of albums. And I think the sound is really good. It's mixed very well, of course, not too surprising. They really put a lot into this reunion album. It was going to be a big deal. People were waiting for it, salivating for it. As soon as it was announced that Deep Purple was getting back together, big deal, because they had been one of the biggest bands in the world. And even though it's interesting to me, I'm still fascinated by numbers, because so many people know Smoke on the Water, yet Machine Head is not one of the top selling albums in all of history. But overall albums, I mean, it's ridiculous how many they've sold. Just absolutely insane. I don't remember the figure, but I remember hearing an interview with Roger saying that it was just something he couldn't even fathom, how many albums they'd sold. And I guess as the artist, is one of the creators and one of the performers on it, that is a lot to mentally absorb, But in any case, this was a very, very big track. And the video, I remember people talking about the video because it was footage. A lot of it was footage from the recording. And they on Rockline, they had talked about a documentary that they were in the process of putting together, just going through all the footage, but they tried to capture as much as they could from the beginning. And again, we're not talking cell phone cameras or, easy handheld digital cameras. We're talking you had to have a camera, like an actual camera that could film things and capture sound and do a good job, because if they were going to put out a documentary, it was going to be high quality. So much going on in the midst of all this, in the midst of them just seeing if they could even be in the same room, let alone whether they could write together, whether they wanted to give this another shot. Such an interesting time for the band. Thank God they made it work, at least for a little while. Not exactly sure how they recorded that, if they just did a delay on I'm the Echo of Your Past and then he did an overdub with the backing vocal, or if he just did the whole thing, the second track himself, and started the second one late. However they did it, this just sounds beautiful. And it's one of the things that I love about a singer who can harmonize themselves, a singer who knows how to work with what they laid down on the first track. I talked a lot about this on the Come Taste the Band album, where it was amazing how Tommy would come up with these things that felt very much on the fly. And then he would come in and do a harmony track or do, another track that worked really well with that first track. And I still don't know right now as I'm recording this that much about Tommy Bolin or how he worked, but it feels like so much of it was just in the moment. This is what I played. This is what I felt in the moment. Now what else am I going to add, to it? And I really like that. I like, even if it's not the way that it was, I like that it feels like that's the way it was. Very spontaneous, very in the moment, much like Richie typically does his solos. But this is some great stuff. Again, blend of the sounds is perfect. Huge Hammond organ sound. bigger, I would say, than a lot of the albums in the 70s. I think we're getting a better blend of organ here. But I love what John's playing in this background part after Ian stops singing. It just fits so well. I like that he made that O part of each of the verses. I think that's really nice. Sometimes it's really hard to do that lyrically and make it fit naturally. Usually there's, like one or two that sound pretty good and the third one feels forced, but this actually works really well. And I love that that's part of the song, almost like it's part of a riff. You have a certain thing that you do in a riff and it just becomes part of the sound of that riff. I like when we have a vocal part because you don't get it a lot. You might repeat certain words or whatever, but this is just like an emotion coming out. And even though it's predetermined where it's going to be, it fits so well. And I like that consistency from one verse to another, that it wasn't just a one-time thing. It's kind of a treat. In my very left ear, I'm hearing some nice things that Richie's throwing in. They're not really high in the mix, which I think is interesting. The mix sounds so full, though. If you start pushing things too high in there, it starts to muddy things up. So I like that it's a little bit quieter and a little more subtle. They're very casual parts that he's putting in there. They're not aggressive. They're not really designed to be up front. They're really just nice background filler and things that keep it interesting, and really like that. It's such a Richie thing, that's really his style. Tommy would just let a note hang there, and that was fine. I like that for him, for what he would do with that. But for Richie, he's more active in parts like that. And I think it's very, very nice what he added in there. Of course, I love the vocals here. I love the kick drum. I like the amount of hi-hat we're getting too. Sometimes the hi-hat can override and drown the song out a little bit, but I think the balance is really good here. I like that we're getting a deeper snare. A lot of times I like a good poppy snare. I like the way it cuts through, especially on a rock or like a hardcore song. Maybe something with a more upbeat tempo to it. But for this, I think that full body snare sound works beautifully. We don't have a fast tempo here. It's very moderate. And that rhythmic foundation is just so much bigger, I think, without overpowering having a snare sound like this. Love that part. Love that line still. Such a great line. I know I must remain inside the silent well of sorrow. Excellent. It's such a visual thing, But this riff, it's funny. I was listening to an interview with Ian Pace. I didn't get a chance to capture it, but he was talking about the riff for Perfect Strangers. And I don't know if he was talking about the verse. I can't imagine he was talking about the verse. Probably more this last section that we just listened to. And he said, Richie had it for years and didn't know what to do with it. And so Ian Pace suggested a tempo. And there you go. Everything else just built around that. And it is interesting because it's not a straight 4/4 part. It's basically 3 measures of 4/4 and then a measure of 6/4. So you've got these 2 extra beats to deal with, which is, as a drummer, takes a minute to get used to. If you're, pretty much a straightforward 4/4, 3/4 rock drummer, you got to figure out what to do with those 2 extra beats that aren't just the same, drum fill or the same accent or something over and over. You got to do something to keep it interesting. I think Ian Pace does a great job with that here. Up to this point, most of the stuff that Deep Purple had done was in 4/4. So not a lot of odd time signature stuff. Of course, the band would get into that more when when Steve Morse joins the band. But yeah, really, really interesting. And I think they play it very, very well. And then, of course, it ends with that just descending pattern, which I think is great. I love the way that they blend this back into the riff to go back into the final verse, but also how they do it at the end, which, obviously we'll get to shortly. But I like the way that it breaks up the monotony of just repeating the riff over and over again. One of my favorite parts of this song is the way that they extend this line out to let the vocals hang instead of just going into the chorus on the normal measure. I think it works great. I think it's a little bit dramatic. It gives the voice a little more power. Great choice. John's playing something very interesting here in the background. He's just doing these little stabs with what sounds, it's probably a Hammond, but it sounds almost like it's a voice pad just going, oh, 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 right on the beat. And it's very gentle, very delicate, but I like what it adds. Sometimes, as a composer, I can tell you, sometimes it's the little things that you add that can make such a big difference, even if they're not specifically noticed or really designed to specifically be noticed. More to thicken things up, more to add atmosphere can be huge, absolutely huge. I think a great example of that would be on the episode that I recorded yesterday with Nathan in This Time Around. That ethereal effect that they put on Glenn's voice made such an atmosphere that it really shaped the song in a way that would have never happened any other way. So yeah, those little subtle things can be very important, whether you notice them or not. Now, of course, we're getting that theremin type sound in the background. I don't think that's an actual theremin, though. I think it's like a whistling synth patch. I could be wrong. I don't know exactly what he played. It's similar to a theremin, but it's not acting or being played like a typical theremin would be. I mean, we're getting more notes and not that sweeping up and down feel that you would get from somebody actually playing a theremin. Plus, I think the pitch is a little bit lower than what I would expect too. So I don't think it's one. It could be a simulator. Don't know what we had in 1984 for that, but most likely it's just a similar, like a whistle type synthesizer. But it adds a lot of mystery, an element that you wouldn't expect in the song, but it kind of goes with the theme, right? Like, yeah, we knew each other, but we don't need to, I don't know. I get the feeling like we don't need to reconnect, or, we need to stay perfect strangers. And I think that this like just adds an element of haunting to it that really kind of works with that. Like, what could be if we united somehow, or we connected more, however you want to see it. But I think it's a pretty cool sound, and I think just on a musical side. I mean, take the storyline or the point of the song or the lyrics aside, take the title away, and it does make the song more interesting as well. And I like that it's subtle. I like that it's not some crazy solo. We don't have a fast tempo. We don't need anything to overshadow the song. In fact, it's in the background too. It's not even in the foreground. The foreground is just this pattern. So it's a very unique placement of it, but a very interesting use of sound as well. This is a great song for Ian Paice too, because live he really gets to have some fun in this section. And there's certain fills that he'll play the same every time, or pretty much every time. And then there's others that are just kind of whatever he feels in the moment. And it's really enjoyable to watch. On top of that, they do an amazing light show with this song. Typically, obviously it depends on the venue, but yeah, great stuff. Alan and I talked about him performing the song with his band as well. And I don't think I've ever performed the song live, but I've jammed to it a lot. And just, yeah, you can really open up and have some fun. But I like that there's one kind of almost fill where you would expect something, but he just kind of lets it hang there and just uses the kick and hi-hat to play through it and doesn't add an accent to it. And then there's that last one when the flange comes in where he hits that cymbal in an unexpected spot. As the song's diminishing. Of course, when they were recording it, they wouldn't have known where the fade was going to be. They were just playing until they were done playing the song. A lot of fun though. I do love this song, the atmosphere. And I remember in the video too, when this part played out, I think they were like fading the video into darkness, like sunset. They were out playing soccer. I think they had some footage of maybe the sunset and them in a vehicle, like the shooting from inside the vehicle, shooting out. And I just remember the images were really strong. I haven't watched the video in a long time, but those are things that are coming to mind. But it's a great song. It really is. To me, it holds up to this day. I have a very interesting Perfect Strangers vinyl collection because they released some really weird stuff. So they've got the album, then they had a picture disc that came out with the track Not Responsible. Then they did another picture disc, which was a single that had Son of Alaric on it. And then there was one version, I think, that had Perfect Strangers, one version that had Knocking at Your Back Door, and the B-side was Son of Alaric. Then there was a 45 of one of those two songs and Son of Alaric, which is a 10-minute song. And I'm guessing, I think the version was truncated. I can't remember now off the top of my, but there's like so many versions of that. And it's really interesting. But it's cool. It's all great stuff. Very, very cool. There was also an album I had, don't have it now, but it was I think it was a picture disc, and it was an interview album. And I can't remember, I think there were 3 interviews on the front, 2 on the back. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And on the front side, it was, I think, a picture of the album cover, and on the back side was a picture of the band, I want to say. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but that was a really cool one to have. Very interesting snapshot of where they were as a group and as individuals and musicians at that time. I remember being struck expressly by one thing in particular that Roger said, which was he had never considered himself a great bass player. And I remember when I met him, which wouldn't have been until the Abandoned tour, so quite some time after Perfect Strangers. And I said to him, I said, I remember this interview where you said you didn't think that you were a great bass player, but let me tell you, you were a great bass player. When I listen to the stuff that he plays, and now obviously he's gotten even better since then, but even on the Abandon album and leading up to that, some of the parts that he writes for bass are just mind blowing to me. And I ever fascinated by his creativity for sure. And he appreciated that, as I recall, in that conversation we had was very, very nice. Got to have some one-on-one time with him and really get in depth into some stuff. So I cherish that moment for sure. Of all the members of Deep Purple that I've had the pleasure of meeting, he was the one I got to spend not just the most time with, but I would say we got to have a really solid conversation that first time. When I saw him last year, or what now I guess as you're getting this would be 2 years from now, he was having a hard time hearing me, and I have kind of a thin voice anyway, so that didn't help. And of course, we're outside, we're at a concert, there's Yes playing in the background, so it's understandable, a little frustrating, but at the same point, I'm just glad I got to see him again and shake his hand and say thank you, which is always the most important thing to me. So anyway, that's it for Perfect Strangers, guys. Excellent song. I hope that you guys enjoy it. It's to me, I don't normally like to rank things, but I would have to say it is one of the best Deep Purple tracks, I think. And that's weird to say among so many great songs. You guys get how I feel about each song on each episode, but this is one of the ones I have to say that's a standout track. If someone were to say, give me 5 songs of Deep Purple to check out, I want to get to know the band, I would have to put this on that list. I really would, because I think it shows the musicianship without being crazy, without getting into like wild solos. It shows that they can write just a solid song, give a great performance, give lots of layers, give a good mood to, give us something to think about. This song really has all the elements, except, interestingly, it doesn't have a guitar solo, which I just realized. That's kind of interesting. The closest we get to a solo on this, other than that whistling synth at the end, would be what Richie's playing in the back of the chorus. So very interesting. I never noticed that before. That was one thing too that kind of surprised me about the song "Easy Livin'" by Uriah Heep. When I listened to that song and I was getting ready to do the episode of the Magicians Podcast on that song, it struck me odd that this is such a big song for them. They're a very guitar and keyboard oriented band, and yet the song had no solo in it. Absolutely fascinating. So anyway, you never know what you're going to get. That's the beauty of arrangements. You don't want it to be the same all the time. You want every song to have something a little bit unique to it, in feeling, in mood, in emotion, in performance, in arrangement, all those things. But I think this is an absolutely solid song. I really do. You can't see it, but I just made the motion of a square. I don't know why. I guess that means solid song. But you guys have a great day. Go check out the track in its entirety on your own. Thank you for joining me for this revisit season, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.